Have you checked the children? Use your little match sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
And I'm Jaime Fuego.
And we are here to begin our venture down the Prom Night series lane, so to speak. That's right. We are going to be covering all the Prom Night movies as we go along here, but we are going to be starting out talking about the original 1980 Prom Night and the 2008 remake. So we're going to do 3 separate reviews. There are 6 movies total in this series.
Yep,
one of
down
them
on each one.
kind of iffy, in that arena, and I'll tell you why when we get to that review. But this is the original Prom Night and its remake, so they are the closest to be able to kind of talk about. 2 and 3 kind of belong together as a group, and then 4 and 5 kind of do as well. So that's how we're doing it, starting off with the 1980 Prom Night. Now, my overall thoughts on this one, and we'll just kind of do slightly more abbreviated versions of our regular reviews, so that these don't turn out to be super long videos. But quite frankly, I don't think there's a ton to talk about in this one. So this one, I was just kind of okay with. I saw certain things that were like, oh, that's pretty cool for, a 1980 horror movie. And we'll talk about it when we get to it. Mainly, that's around the acting for me. But as far as scary, no. As far as killers go, no.
Yeah.
As far as...
It wasn't very violent in my estimation.
No,
I mean,
no.
despite the fact that people do get killed, but it was rather tame compared to a lot of other slashers of the time, in my opinion.
Even in its own series, 100%. So, yeah, this one was a little disappointing to me, to be honest with you. It is one of the early Jamie Lee Curtis horror movies,
Post-Halloween, though.
Just barely, by 1 year. So, this it's still not great to me. What about for you,
It's campy, man, and this is one that I think I watched at one point, but I didn't remember much about it, probably because of the fact that 2 is the one, which we'll get to later on, that always stood out to me as being the top tier of the franchise, basically. But I don't know, aside from, there's a really creepy scene with these kids at the beginning of the film where they're like, kill, kill, in this weird hide and seek.
Kill! Kill! Kill!
I found that to be the most unnerving and slightly disturbing of the entire film, because everything else, the disco-centric vibe of it, even Jamie Lee and her little band of girlfriends and stuff, it's dull, man, and there's nothing iconic about the killer just going around with
a ski mask.
Ski mask, yeah, essentially. And I think maybe because of the fact that we're so desensitized as horror fans, and we've seen so much more gruesome stuff, I guess maybe I don't appreciate how this was one of those early slashers as much. I mean, honestly, as far as great Canadian slasher stuff goes, I would most definitely watch Black Christmas over this, and came out 6 years before, I want to say. So I can understand why people love it, and it's probably a lot of Jamie Lee fanboys. So.
Probably so. The story, it starts off with the proto I Know What You Did Last Summer story, except what if the beginning of that movie took place when they were in grade school instead?
1974.
It takes place was it only 6 years? I thought it was more like 10 or whatever.
Yeah,
but
I was just looking on the wiki before we started.
Yeah,
this,
so this group of kids are playing this weird hide and seek game, and this outcast kid tries to go and join in, but she gets picked on immediately and accidentally backs out of a window off of a second story and dies. And so the kids make a pact to never mention it again, except it turns out that someone happens across the body before all the police do and everything. And so we flash forward, I guess, 6 years to where all these kids are now at prom age, and some of them are intertwined with each other. They're all still friends, but a couple of the others have other significant others, and they go to prom when one surmises that it's the person that stumbled onto the body back then, starts to hunt them down on prom.
Well, there's also an escaped and mental institution angle, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And, because then you are left guessing, kind of Scream fashion, who could this killer be? And there's they're pointing in one direction, it might not be in that direction as far as who you think is
right. They're pulling the Cotton Weary thing.
Very much so.
So yeah, people start to get picked off, and the killer is so not intimidating because all he does is go now, now, now. Scream whispers now as he's stabbing people, and it's not unnerving at all. And then, eventually, without spoiling, turns out that there's a connection to one of our main characters. Ooh, surprise, surprise. We figured it would be something like that. But
yeah, and honestly, the big reveal of who the killer actually is without saying who it is, I saw it a mile away. This is one of those movies where, like, unlike the Screams and later on stuff, you know, where, like, the bait and switch and the guessing game and whatnot, yeah, it was pretty telegraphed in my estimation. If you, like, pay close attention to the beginning, that aspect, and, you know, who the connection could be, so...
Now, I did mention earlier the acting. I thought the acting was actually really good for slashers back in this era. There's a lot of ham-fisted acting, even in this very series going forward, but these kids actually did feel like high school students, surprisingly enough. So
yeah, some of the banter with Jamie Lee and her friends, even if it is, like, kind of derpily, it felt like, I mean, it feels like back when I was in high school, and some of just the nonsense that, you know, some of my classmates would just get into, and some of them, like, they're very trivial concerns and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Finally, the effects were next to none to be had. I mean, there was very little gore, very little... Well, I can't say very little violence, but by today's horror standards, very little violence.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just a few stabby stabs, and that's about it. And it really wasn't that creative in the stabby stab department either. So
yeah, I mean, I like the use of the mirror and, like, the shard and all that, and, like, scratching out the, you know, pictures of different people. But I mean, I don't know, as far as, like, the carnage candy, as everybody loves to, you know, drop that, yeah, it doesn't really have to have a lot of it. So yeah. And it actually probably makes sense why they could do the remake in 2008 as a PG-13 film, because, I mean, the fact that the 81 got an R rating, they could have toned down just the slightest bit and probably passed the PG rating, you know, back in the day.
So ultimately, Prom Night,
it's all right.
It's not really I mean, it's a classic in the sense that it was made in 1980, but it's not one that you need to have in your regular rotation, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, as fun, once again, back to Black Christmas or even another Jamie Lee, like the original Halloween, I feel like those are significantly superior films, but this is an interesting little time capsule, especially with the disco-ness once again. That was, like, I was the most amused by just the type of prom that they had, and, you know, the, like, glowing lights on the disco dance floor and stuff like that. I don't know. That was some of the only flavor that I found amusing about this, I guess. So, yeah.
That's going to do it for our thoughts on the original Prom Night. Let's talk about the remake that came 28 years later in 2008 called Prom Night. It does not follow the exact same plot. It's actually quite different, and I gotta say that this movie started off where I was really engaged with it. I liked the idea. It starts off strong, and I wasn't having the same problem with the cast of this movie that I normally have with the cast of teeny horror movies around this 2000s era.
You see, I was, but that's just me.
but nonetheless, the beginning of it was cool, but then it started to spiral into that typical 2000s horror movie tropiness that no one's making good decisions, no one's figuring out the easiest things to figure out, and the characters just stop being engaging at a certain point. What I liked was the backstory and the setup for this movie, and everything that came after that just never really lived up to it. So ultimately, this ended up being a bigger disappointment. However, I will say that if someone were to tell me you have to throw on, you know, either the original or this one, I would probably throw this one on.
I probably would too, but that's more so for Idris Elba than anything else. Like, he is doing his damnedest in this, man.
Idris Elba was in this movie.
Yes. Yeah, seriously, and in a larger role than I was anticipating, actually. I thought it was going to be more of a throwaway sort of situation, but he is the cop, detective, whatever you want to say. Yeah. I did like the obsessive angle of this creepy dude who goes and butchers this girl's family, and then her dealing with the PTSD of the aspect. Whereas the original Prom Night had that mystery as to, like, who the killer actually is. There's none of that in this. It's a very straightforward approach. It's a nice looking movie, but I did not really like any of the characters aside from our final girl, like the dopey boyfriend and, you know, the girl rivalries and stuff like that about who's going to be prom queen. I don't know, man. I mean, like our lead girl and Idris, and I actually liked his younger white assistant dude who's, like, helping him out. I thought they had good chemistry, but it's really the fact that I wanted this to, and I watched the unrated version no less, and it still feels very tame. Yeah, that was the word I was going to go for too. So in some ways, I guess I would agree with you that I would probably watch this over the original, but I wouldn't, like, recommend either of these as being anything too memorable. So
So yeah, Fuego touched on the story a bit. Basically, this girl gets home and her family is in the middle of getting butchered, and she manages to hide under a bed as her mom gets killed in front of her.
that's
and
an
then,
effective scene, I will
Yeah.
definitely say.
But it turns out that the guy got caught by the police, and so it's been 3 years since it happened, and now she lives with her aunt and uncle played by Johnny Cage from the
Yeah.
original Mortal Kombat movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go to prom. She's still dealing with the post-traumatic stress, which is understandable, but she decides she's going to go and celebrate prom and not think about it for once. And of course, that's when the guy happens to break out of prison, or whatever the facility that he was sent to. Was an insane asylum.
Psychiatric place.
Yeah,
of sorts or
psychiatric,
something. Yeah,
a
because he's like
hospital.
an obsessive psychopath.
Because he was declared insane instead of being sent to a maximum security prison. So he gets out and gets all the information he needs to find her at this special hotel where they're having this prom. This
Yeah, talk about a lavish
super
prom.
swanky
Like,
prom.
holy crap, man. And
They
the
even
fact
say that one of the girls' father spent an extra $100,000 on the prom. And stuff. I was like, Jesus.
Oh, well, it felt like a red carpet sort of event with all the, parents doing photography and, like, the carpet and photo spot and this insane place where they were having it. I guess the fifth film is really the only other one that had a similar, like, just site that is just so excessive and impressive. So.
But yeah, so the killer gets there and starts to pick off people one at a time as he's waiting for his opportunity to spring himself upon this girl that he's been obsessed with ever since she got away 3 years ago. And
they never really clarify if he was like an upperclassman that was obsessed with her or a student or whatever. We just know that, yes, he's obsessed, and that's about it.
right, and like Fuego said, Idris Elba plays the lead detective who has been following the case, and they found out 3 days after the guy escaped, so they're playing catch-up the whole movie, basically, and it becomes a typical mid-2000s slasher at that point, and that's when it kind of loses its steam. The unrated aspect of it is silly
because they're still cutting away.
There's blood
every
sprays,
film.
but it like sprays against plastic, and you're on the other side, so you don't really see it. And then there's a lot of dead body throat slashes that you see, and I don't know if they consider that the hardcore stuff because there's a lot of them, but that's all it is. It's very simple. It's not gory, really, especially by today's standards.
Yeah. The kills are just uninventive and just very, by the numbers sort of situation, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So.
And again, the acting, to me, it didn't...
It's all right.
It devolved. Like, for whatever reason, they didn't bother me at first. I kind of liked their interplay, their group of four. I was like, okay, they were charming, and then, or a group of six, rather. And then as they, slowly start to make dumb decisions and get picked off, it's like, I don't care about these people anymore. And it dwindled the goodwill that it built up in the first 20 to 25 minutes of the movie for me. So, yeah, I mean, even the acting wasn't great. It wasn't bad, but it did devolve into typical silliness.
Yeah, and also like you've got the quarreling couple and the guy who was being an asshole, and I mean, granted, once again, like these are real things that kids have to endure. They're like, okay, the friends are getting split up, and can we do a long distance relationship? All these different things are real time stuff that people deal with anytime you're about to graduate. But I don't know, they weren't bad, but definitely not memorable. So that's the thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, what else is there to talk about? I mean, like you said, it was a pretty movie. It was filmed nice.
It was well shot.
Yeah, it was well shot.
Good. You could tell there was
presented.
there was some budget behind this film, most definitely. I don't know if it was like decently profitable at the box office or anything, but you could tell they actually at least cared with some of the money that they put behind it, and getting someone like Idris. Although I don't even think he had done Luther at this point, so he was not like a
no, but
household
he did
name
do
like
The Wire before this. Though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I did look that up because The Wire was like 2001.
I never watched The Wire. Yeah, that was the
His year was, I
HBO
think,
show,
2002,
Baltimore drug
2003,
dealing and stuff.
Mhm.
Okay.
So it's about 5 years after he came on the scene on The Wire, but
Okay.
but he was still definitely young. You could tell. He
Oh
was-
yeah.
Got that fire in his eye detective look instead of the grizzled veteran look that he has now. You know.
Long before he was rolling the gunslingers.
Oh God, that's the
I
one
know,
you go
right?
to. Jesus. All right, so I don't know. Any final thoughts on this one or the original 1980 Prom Night, Fuego?
No, I think we've touched it all, man. The second film in the series, which we're about to review here, just in a moment after we finish this one up, that's the one that I'm most excited about because I think Hello Mary Lou is the best of the series. But,
Yeah, so we'll
these two,
talk
not so
about
much.
that next.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you guys very much for watching. What are your thoughts on either the 1980 Prom Night or the 2008 Prom Night? Do you like it? Do you have weak spots for either one, or are you just kind of blah on them as well? Again, we'll be back to discuss the next 2 in the series, Prom Night 2, Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2, and Prom Night 3, The Last Kiss. So we'll be talking about those in the next installment. But thank you for watching this one, especially if you've watched this far. Thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel. We greatly appreciate you guys supporting the channel directly as you do. If you enjoyed the video, click the like button and subscribe. We would greatly appreciate for that as well.
Easy.
But until next time, I've been Cecil Laird.
And gracias, I've been Jaime in Fuego.
And remember, stay scared.